I'd just finished my quarterly presentation, a polished, data-driven breakdown of how we'd crossed the $50 million revenue milestone, when the new CEO, Damon Reeves, stood up, adjusted his cufflinks, and cleared his throat. "Before we wrap up," he said, with the kind of grin that didn't reach his eyes, "I have one more announcement to make. It concerns our leadership restructuring." I froze. My hand still hovered over the trackpad as the final slide. A celebratory graphic titled Q2 Revenue Surge, a record-breaking quarter, shone behind me. Damon walked slowly toward the front of the room. Our entire executive team sat in silence. Some looked puzzled. A few, those who'd been whispering in corners lately, wouldn't meet my eyes. "As of today," Damon continued, "Olivia will be stepping down as Chief Operating Officer. Her contributions have been significant, and we are deeply grateful." A pause. "But as we pivot into a new phase of aggressive scalability, we need less bottlenecking in operations and more agile decision-making. Olivia's strength is her strategic discipline, but we need to be faster, leaner." A strange silence descended over the room. Not shocked silence. Ashamed silence. "I believe your exact words last week were, 'We should hire more carefully and invest in development before scaling too fast,'" Damon added casually. "That kind of caution has its place, but not now. Thank you for your service." He turned to the team as if that explained everything. I stared at him, at this man who had joined the company less than 3 months ago, and smiled. "I appreciate the clarity," I said simply. No dramatics, no tears, no protest, just silence. Then I stepped aside as Damon took over the projector and launched into a slide titled Phase 2, Structural Optimization. I walked back to my office as if I were just heading to a lunch break. They didn't know. They had no idea what I'd already done. 2 months earlier, when Damon had been appointed by the board, I'd felt something shift. He came from a background of fast turnover VC firms, places where decisions were made with spreadsheets and ego, not people. From day one, he saw me not as a partner, but as an obstacle to bulldoze. I'd founded the company's original product line 6 years ago. I'd built the team. I'd written the operations manual. And when our founding CEO had stepped down due to health reasons, it was me who kept the ship from sinking. I didn't ask for praise. I asked for loyalty. I got neither. Instead, I noticed changes, meetings I wasn't invited to, strategies reversed without discussion, and a growing sense that Damon was crafting a narrative that didn't include me. Then, one afternoon, I overheard his assistant, on speakerphone, scheduling a lunch with our largest vendor. My vendor. The one I had personally negotiated contracts with for 5 years. "The idea," he told the vendor's rep, "is to phase Olivia out quietly. It'll make things smoother." They wanted to erase me, but I had already begun taking precautions. I'd seen the signs, and I knew something they didn't. Our biggest vendor, Chronocore Systems, had been struggling financially. I'd been reviewing their quarterly filings quietly, and I knew they were looking for a buyout. The opportunity was golden, so I reached out to an old friend from grad school, now a private equity partner in Boston. We made an offer through a holding company I had created quietly the year before. It was a clean acquisition. Silent, legal, discreet. By the time Damon called their CEO to push me out of vendor negotiations, he was told politely but firmly that any communication would now go through the holding company's new leadership. He never made the connection. So when he announced my termination in front of the team, when he smiled as if he'd just removed the last obstacle to his precious Phase 2, I didn't flinch. Because while Damon was sharpening his axe, I was buying the ground he stood on. Back in my office, I packed my things slowly. Family photo. The brass fountain pen my team gave me last Christmas. A leather-bound copy of The Lean Startup still full of my margin notes. I placed everything neatly in a box, then turned to face the glass wall. Through it, I could see Damon laughing with the CFO. I smiled again. Softly this time. Tomorrow, the emails would start. The contracts would change. And in 3 days, panic would replace that smug confidence. Because the heartbeat of the company's supply chain, the one vendor they couldn't replace, was now owned by me. And I was done being quiet. Friday morning, I received a polite but cold email from HR. Subject: Transition Plan. Olivia, please complete the enclosed checklist before 5 p.m. today. We'll arrange for your severance and benefits transfer accordingly. Also, Damon asked if you'd be willing to draft a knowledge transfer document for your replacement. Best, Camille. People operations. I chuckled. The man fires me in front of my team, then asks for a favor like we're exchanging birthday cards. Still, I responded with a short message. Camille, I'll ensure all deliverables are documented. Regards, Olivia. It wasn't just professionalism. It was strategy. Every file I handed over would be clean, precise, and just incomplete enough to make them reliant on a partner they no longer controlled. And that partner? Chrono Core Systems. They still hadn't put the pieces together. At 10:17 a.m., I got a call from Michelle, my attorney. They've started sniffing, she said. A junior procurement manager at your old company reached out to Chrono Core asking why they haven't signed off on a new delivery schedule. And we responded formally, cited the recent acquisition, and said the new leadership team will be handling future discussions directly. They'll escalate it by Monday, I predicted, especially when they realize how central Chrono Core is to the Phase 2 rollout. They've got a dependency they didn't even think to vet, Michelle said, almost amused. Congratulations, you own their supply chain. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the stack of framed awards I hadn't packed yet. Most were for operations excellence, cost savings, strategic procurement, all earned under my watch. They used to be proud of me, until I became inconvenient. That evening, I had dinner with Clara, one of the few people at the company I still trusted. She slid into the booth at our usual wine bar, eyes wide. Everyone's talking about it. Damon was cocky all afternoon, but around 3 p.m., his mood shifted. Something spooked him. I stirred my drink. Was it about Chrono Core? She nodded. They were supposed to finalize next quarter's contract this week, but the call got bounced. Legal said something about a change in ownership structure, and now Damon's demanding answers. I raised an eyebrow. So he's finally paying attention. Clara leaned in. He doesn't know, does he? Not yet. What are you going to do? I smiled, slow and deliberate. Nothing. I already did it. On Saturday, I received a request for a meeting. Not from Damon. From their procurement lead, Trevor. Hi, Olivia. I know things ended awkwardly, but I was hoping to speak briefly about the Chrono Core contract. There seems to be some confusion internally, and you're the only one who handled those negotiations. Would you be open to a quick call? Trevor, I didn't respond. Not out of pettiness, but because it wasn't my job anymore. Instead, Michelle sent a formal letter on behalf of the holding company, Verity Partners, LLC, informing Techline, the parent company, that all further negotiations regarding Chrono Core's services would go through Verity's new client relations lead, me. Sunday evening, just after 9 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown caller, Damon Reeves, 1 missed call, voicemail, 1 new message. I didn't listen to it. Michelle had advised me not to. Let your silence be the loudest thing in the room, she'd said. And she was right. Monday morning hit like a thunderclap at Techline HQ. I woke early, brewed my coffee, and pulled up the internal dashboards I still had temporary access to through the vendor portal. In red, unconfirmed, 4th quarter supplier contracts pending approval. That pending status would freeze 3 major product lines if left unresolved. At 8:02 a.m., Clara texted. Damon stormed into the 8 a.m. all hands. Nobody knew what was happening. He looks like he hasn't slept. By 10:30 a.m., LinkedIn was buzzing. A press release had gone out. Chrono Core Systems announces new ownership under Verity Partners, LLC. The acquisition marks a new chapter in operational leadership and client engagement. Our mission remains unchanged, to provide best-in-class enterprise solutions to our valued clients. It didn't mention my name. but everyone who knew me knew. At 11:12 a.m., I received a one-line email from Damon. "We need to talk. Urgently." I forwarded it to Michelle. She called 10 minutes later, laughing. "He's panicking. He finally realized who bought the kingdom he thought he ruled." And I hadn't even begun to play my next card. Chronocore didn't just supply software components, they handled the data architecture for Techline's newest project. An AI-powered operations hub Damon had staked his entire CEO reputation on. Without Chronocore's custom data libraries, that project would fall flat before launch. In the hallway outside my apartment, the echo of footsteps passed my door. I glanced at my boxed-up office gear still sitting by the entryway. I hadn't decided whether to unpack it or donate it. It didn't matter anymore, because on paper I no longer worked at Techline, but in practice, they worked for me. By Tuesday morning, the storm had officially landed at Techline. I didn't need internal access to see it. All I had to do was watch the tremors ripple across LinkedIn. A project manager had quietly updated her status to open to work. 2 engineers from the AI division reposted the Chronocore acquisition announcement with vague captions like, "Big industry moves ahead," and "One door closes, another opens." But the real fallout began with a calendar invite, sent from Damon's assistant. Subject line, "Emergency leadership meeting, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance." Clara texted me at 8:44 a.m. He's sweating. Literally. We all saw him walk in. He looks like someone just handed him a resignation letter written in blood. I smiled into my coffee cup. This wasn't personal vengeance. I wasn't interested in watching Damon fall apart for the sake of it. But I was interested in watching the board realize what kind of decision they'd made when they handed the keys to a man who couldn't see 3 moves ahead. That morning, Michelle and I finalized our formal licensing proposal for Techline. It wasn't cruel. It was just expensive. Chronocore had previously offered services under a volume discount model, negotiated directly by me to optimize for scale and growth. That model was now off the table. What Techline would now be offered was a pay-as-you-go structure, billed monthly, with a premium for data hosting, integration support, and, critically, access to the proprietary AI learning modules that had become the backbone of their next-generation ops hub. Michelle read the terms aloud again just to savor them. Standard enterprise rates, plus a 22% premium for custom dependencies, plus exclusivity protections. Oh, and public acknowledgement of Chronocore's new ownership, of course. "Let's send it before lunch," I said. "It'll give them just enough time to lose their appetites." That afternoon, my phone buzzed. From Clara. "Olivia, the engineers figured it out." "You bought Chronocore? It's flying through Slack." Damon is livid. He pulled the entire DevOps team into a private meeting, locked door and all. A few minutes later, PS. 2 directors just asked me if you're hiring. I typed a reply, but stopped short of sending it. Better to let the uncertainty do the work for me. Meanwhile, Michelle received a formal response from Techline's legal department, acknowledging our offer, but not accepting it. They wanted to discuss potential alternative licensing terms. Translation: they couldn't afford it, and they were hoping I'd blink. I didn't. Instead, Michelle sent a short, courteous note. As outlined in our offer, these terms are non-negotiable unless accompanied by a substantial equity stake or public acquisition offer. We understand if Techline prefers to seek other vendors. There were no other vendors. Chronocore wasn't just their provider. It was their infrastructure. It wasn't like switching office chairs. It would take at least 18 months to rebuild what we had developed. And they didn't have that kind of time. That evening, as I walked through my new office at Verity's downtown location, Chronocore's updated HQ, I noticed the construction crew finishing the glass walls on our new strategy lab. I watched the team setting up whiteboards and tech screens, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail received. I hit play. "Olivia, this is Damon. I think we need to start over. I don't know what your endgame is here, but you're putting a lot of people at risk. People who supported you for years. Just think about that. You were better than this. The arrogance, wrapped in false concern, made me shake my head. I had put people at risk? This man had fired me in front of a full executive team. He had pushed through reckless expansion plans, cut onboarding and QA budgets, and eliminated remote flexibility to boost productivity, then blamed me when senior developers started leaving. And now, suddenly, he was the victim? Number Damon wasn't worried about the staff. He was worried about the board. Clara confirmed it the next morning. He tried to spin the vendor situation as unexpected market volatility. The board wasn't having it. They asked for a full audit of supplier dependencies. He deflected. Then they brought in audit counsel. This is unraveling fast. I think he knows he's done. At noon, my inbox pinged. Subject: immediate assistance requested. From Techline Board Chair, Richard Alvarez, Dr. Monroe. On behalf of the Board of Directors at Techline, I'd like to request a confidential meeting at your earliest availability. We are reviewing the current leadership's handling of strategic partnerships and understand you may have insights relevant to the board's assessment. Please let us know a convenient time to speak. Now that was interesting. I replied, Mr. Alvarez, I would be happy to make time later this week. Thursday or Friday morning would work well. Please let me know what suits your schedule. Respectfully, Olivia Monroe, Managing Partner, Verity Partners. As I hit send, I leaned back in my chair and looked at the framed quote on my shelf. A gift from one of my engineers back at Techline. Be the kind of leader your future self won't have to apologize for. I had no apologies to make. Because while Damon had played politics, I'd built power, and the game wasn't over. Thursday morning arrived bright and cold, with a sharpness in the air that felt appropriate. I dressed carefully. A navy pantsuit with clean lines, silver cufflinks, and the sapphire ring my grandmother had left me. It was the kind of outfit that said, I don't work for you, but you'll wish I did. At exactly 9 a.m., I stepped into a private boardroom on the 32nd floor of the Halberton Tower, where the Techline board had reserved space for what they described as a confidential off-site review. The receptionist greeted me warmly. Dr. Monroe, they're expecting you. Inside, Richard Alvarez, chairman of the board, stood to greet me. Thank you for coming, Olivia. We appreciate you making the time. Of course, I said, shaking his hand. The room was quiet, paneled in dark walnut, with a carafe of coffee sitting untouched on the credenza. 6 board members sat at the table, their expressions ranging from neutral to uncomfortable. They weren't sure how I'd show up. Angry? Bitter? Smug? Instead, I brought calm. I understand you've asked for some insight into the Chronocore situation, I began. Richard nodded. It's escalated beyond what we anticipated. I figured it might. I placed a sleek leather folder on the table. In here, you'll find a timeline of events. Emails, correspondence, financial filings. All of which confirm that Chronocore was fully acquired by Verity Partners as of 3 weeks ago. We are now the exclusive provider of your AI systems architecture and own the data modules currently powering over 60% of your next-gen rollout. Silence. And, I continued, you'll find that at the time of acquisition, I was no longer employed by Techline, which means legally there is no conflict of interest. Only a failure to recognize operational risk on your current leadership's part. A board member in a gray suit leaned forward. Why didn't Damon flag this? Perhaps, I said evenly, because he didn't see it coming. That landed. I watched them shift in their seats. Richard cleared his throat. He told us the vendor disruption was due to internal politics, that Chronocore had overextended. I shook my head. Chronocore is more stable now than it's been in 5 years. What's unstable is Damon's assumption that cutting out institutional knowledge was the best path forward. I paused, then added softly, sometimes the bottleneck isn't the one who's slow. It's the one who doesn't know what they're holding back. Later that day, back at Verity's office, I met with my new executive team. We were reviewing the final terms of the updated licensing agreement Techline was now being urged to sign. It's generous, said Michelle. We even included a 6-month grace period at their old pricing tier to ease the blow. They won't see it that way, I replied. But it's fair. We're not here to punish. We're here to protect our product and set a precedent. Across the table, our CTO, Eli, pulled up a live dashboard showing incoming client inquiries. Since the press release, he said, we've had 12 enterprise-level companies reach out, some of them Techline competitors, asking about migrating to our platform. I looked at the list. 2 names jumped out immediately. I used to chase those clients for years at Techline, only to be told they were out of reach. Now they were knocking on my door. By Friday, the board had called an emergency executive session. Clara kept me updated via text. Rumor is Damon won't survive the weekend. They've pulled his calendar access. Legal's involved. Also, fun side note. He just realized the DevOps team copied you on the last documentation repo before you left. The audit trails are time-stamped. It proves you were working in good faith the entire time. He's unraveling. I stared at that word. Unraveling. It didn't bring me joy. It brought closure. This wasn't about revenge. This was about recognition. About being pushed aside and told, you're in the way, after 6 years of building something from the ground up. It was about showing them what happened when they dismissed the woman who had read every line of code, built every partnership, and mentored half the people now holding the company together. That evening, just before I closed my laptop for the weekend, I received another message. Subject: formal response to licensing proposal. From Richard Alvarez. Dr. Monroe, the board has reviewed the proposal from Verity Partners. We are prepared to accept the terms as outlined, including the updated pricing model, acknowledgement of new ownership, and the 6-month transition clause. We also wish to extend an apology for the way your departure was handled. We understand this does not change the past, but we hope it opens the door to a more respectful professional relationship moving forward. Thank you for your time and for reminding us what true leadership looks like. I read it twice, then once more. I forwarded it to Michelle. Her reply came instantly. Well, that's about as close to a corporate confession as you're going to get. I leaned back in my chair and watched the lights flicker across the skyline. Below, the city buzzed, people rushing, chasing, climbing. And me? I wasn't climbing anymore. I'd already arrived. Monday morning started quietly. Too quietly. The kind of calm that comes before the roof caves in. I arrived at Verity's headquarters just before 8 a.m., coffee in hand, and opened my inbox. There it was. A flood of overnight alerts, press inquiries, and internal updates. The story had broken. CEO ousted in corporate shakeup, Techline board removes Damon Reeves amid vendor crisis. The headline was everywhere. Tech blogs, financial news, even a LinkedIn trend under number leadership matters. I clicked the article, scanning for familiar names. It quoted a source close to the board, saying that Damon's failure to assess critical supplier risks, combined with the abrupt loss of Chronocore, had caused irreversible reputational damage and left multiple product lines in jeopardy. He was out, effective immediately. Clara confirmed it within the hour. It's real. Damon cleared his desk at 7 a.m. No speech, no drama. He didn't even make eye contact on the way out. The interim CEO is Richard Donovan. He used to head operations at Ironcore before their acquisition. Total cleanup guy. P.S. They're rebranding the AI Ops Hub to distance it from Phase 2. People are calling it the Ghost Project internally. She followed it with a gif of someone dumping water on a fire. I smiled. But even amid all this chaos, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, resolved. Because while Damon's fall had been inevitable, what came next mattered more. At 11 a.m., I walked into our product lab for a team debrief. Our engineers were preparing a technical rollout for new enterprise clients, many of whom had reached out after seeing Techline stumble. Eli, our CTO, pulled me aside before we started. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Techline sent over a draft of the public licensing agreement. They actually included your name. I blinked. You're joking. Not even a little. They wrote, technology developed by Olivia Monroe, licensed exclusively through Verity Partners. Front and center. Legal must have forced it through. I stared at the document. Seeing my name, official, public, undeniable, was like breathing in for the first time after months underwater. They've never said it before, I whispered. Not once. Not when I built the system. Not when it launched. Not even after the first 1,000,000 users. Well, Eli said, they're saying it now, loud and clear. By Tuesday, we held a private strategy session to review the incoming migration requests. 12 former Techline clients had asked to demo our new architecture. 3 of them, had been considered untouchable accounts when I worked there. Executives would dismiss the idea before I even finished my pitch, but now they were knocking. Not because of a flashy deck or clever marketing, but because they finally saw what I had always been saying. The value wasn't in the brand. It was in the work. That afternoon, I received a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Layla Grant. She'd been one of the only other senior women in Techline's leadership during my early years. Smart, ambitious, empathetic, but driven. We'd worked side by side until she was edged out 2 years before me during another realignment. Olivia, she said, I've been watching this whole thing unfold. You have no idea what it's done for the women still in tech. Especially those over 40, I was quiet for a moment, unsure how to respond. You didn't just win, Layla continued. You proved that dignity and patience can coexist with strategy, that you can outthink someone without stooping to their level. It's rare, and it's powerful. Her words stayed with me long after we ended the call. Because this was the impact I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about a comeback. It was about a message. You can fight back without becoming the villain. By Wednesday, Techline issued a formal company-wide announcement. Techline has reached a strategic agreement with Verity Partners for continued access to the ChronoCore platform. We are committed to maintaining operational excellence as we evolve under new leadership. Buried at the bottom was a quiet line acknowledging me by name. No adjectives, no embellishments, just facts. It was enough. Meanwhile, our marketing team at Verity was finalizing a keynote presentation I'd been invited to deliver at the Global Technology Leadership Forum next month. The title? When the system says you're replaceable, and you prove it wrong. That evening, I returned home to find a handwritten note in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a simple card. 1 line. You've become the story I tell my daughter when she thinks she's not strong enough. No name. No signature. Just that. I held the card to my chest and let myself feel it. Not pride, not vengeance. Just clarity. This wasn't about what they had taken from me. It was about what I had reclaimed. My name, my work, my worth. And I wasn't done yet. 1 year after I carried my things out of Techline's glass tower in a plain cardboard box, I walked into Verity's headquarters as the morning light spilled across the polished floor. It felt like a quiet milestone. No fanfare, no announcements, just the gentle click of my heels and the steady hum of a company I had rebuilt from the ground up. As I made my way to my office, Eli waved me down from the strategy room. You're going to want to see this, he said, gesturing me over with a grin. I stepped inside to find our analytics dashboard on the wall, cycling through live data from our clients. The numbers were impossible to ignore. Client retention, 98% new enterprise onboardings, 14 in the last quarter. Revenue growth, up 31% year over year. Then Eli brought up the most satisfying figure, Techline's projected market share loss, 27% net migration to Verity infrastructure. 9 of their top 20 former accounts. They tried to downplay it at first, Eli said, but investors are asking questions. And now, finally, they're answering. I blinked. Answering how? He turned the screen to show me the official statement just posted on Techline's investor relations site. We acknowledge that strategic missteps, including the mishandling of key partnerships, contributed to the challenges we faced last year. We also recognize the foundational work of former executives, including Olivia Munro, in building the operational systems that continue to shape the market. They said it, not just behind closed doors, not whispered in apology, publicly. My name, in print, attached to my work. I leaned against the table, quiet for a moment. Eli watched me, then added, "It's not everything, but it's something. It's enough," I said. I didn't need credit. I needed truth. Later that day, I reviewed the latest reports from our legal team. 3 more licensing agreements were finalized. One of them had been Techline's oldest partner, now fully transitioned to our system. Michelle sent me a message shortly after. "You know they're going to try to buy time with new branding, new leadership, and PR campaigns. But the core problem still stands. They forgot the people who built their foundation. And you reminded them, without ever raising your voice." I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there, rereading her message, letting it settle. Because that was it, wasn't it? All the strategy, all the quiet moves, all the times I stayed calm when they expected me to break. It wasn't about ego. It was about proving that grace and power aren't mutually exclusive. That evening, as I walked through Verity's quiet halls, I noticed something new near the entryway. A framed plaque, one I hadn't approved but immediately recognized. It read, "The real legacy of innovation is not the product. It's the people who make it possible." Underneath it, in smaller text, was my name. I stood there for a long time, staring at the reflection of the hallway lights in the glass. Then my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was a message from Clara. "Just wanted you to know, I officially start Monday. Thank you for keeping the door open. It feels like I'm coming home." I smiled. Clara had been one of the last to leave Techline. Loyal to a fault, but now finally ready to grow beyond what that place ever allowed her to become. "Welcome back," I replied. "There's so much more we're going to build." At home that night, I pulled a small box from the back of my closet. It still held some things from that final day at Techline. My mug, my team's farewell note, the pen they gave me when we crossed $50 million in revenue. I looked at each item, not with sadness, but with clarity. Because those years hadn't been wasted. They had shaped me, tempered me. They had made this moment possible. A year ago, they told me I was a bottleneck. What they never understood was that I wasn't holding the company back. I was holding it together. And now, I was building something even stronger, on my own terms, with the right people, and with my name exactly where it belonged. Not hidden in the footnotes. Not tucked in someone else's speech, but written clearly, boldly, permanently, at the top.